Welcome back to the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I am your host, Joe Chap. We are on the final thoughts, the closing argument of the podcast. And if you're on YouTube, you're watching this for the first time. This is where I just go into kind of like something that I'm thinking, usually me or Tyler or one of my guests that's on. And it's our closing thoughts. And we could have different closing thoughts, whatever. So I was reading, it's from NFL.com. Taylor Decker says he's been in Detroit since they were the butt of all jokes. So their 2023 expectations mean nothing until they prove it. I'm tentative to put expectations or long-term goals out there because I've said it a million times. I was here when we were the butt of all jokes. So Taylor Decker has been here at the beginning when everything was happening. When Bob Quinn was his general manager, when Matt Patricia was the fat Matt Patricia was his coach. He says ultimately the expectations, while they are fun and a cool thing to get that attention, they mean nothing until we prove it. Now, a lot of people have been echoing the same point. Dan Campbell echoed the same point. Jared Goff echoed the same point. Aiden Hutchinson echoed the same point. But Taylor Decker has echoed it in a different proportion because Taylor Decker has been through it all with the Detroit Lions. He has seen Bob Quinn come in here and destroy the team. He has seen Fat Pat Patricia come in here and absolutely gut the team. And Patricia was the low point of this Detroit Lions franchise. He was at the lowest point. He was probably the lowest point of this franchise, him and Bob Quinn. When a guy like Taylor Decker says something like this, just be aware what he's saying to NFL.com. I'm sure every player that is on that team is hearing the same thing from Taylor Decker. I'm sure Tracy Walker can say the same thing. These guys that have been on the Detroit Lions for a long time, they have seen some shit that you just don't even understand. Some of these rookies will never understand. Some of these players that are coming in Detroit Lions right now, they will never understand. Even Brad Holmes was talking today on 97.1 The Ticket. And he said when he came in here, he had to practically beg people to come to the Detroit Lions. And the way you change that is by building a culture and building a team that is willing to play at a high level. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have put together a really good team. They have put together a culture that you can see from the outside and say, I want to be a part of that. Cameron Sutton, David Montgomery, those guys came from, well, not David Montgomery, but Cameron Sutton came from a winning organization. So did Emmanuel Mosley. So did Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I mean, for God's sakes, his team was in the Super Bowl last year. It can't be understated how far the Detroit Lions have come, but how far they have to go. A lot of people talk about the Detroit Lions, and they talk about where they are in their progression. What are the Detroit Lions? Well, the Detroit Lions are a team that can compete. Well, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. It truly doesn't. So, a lot of people are going to look at this and they're going to say, They're going to read it on NFL.com and they're going to be like, what is he talking about? And obviously, if you're an NFL fan, you're going to know. And if you follow this team throughout, you're going to know. And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, so if you're watching this clip on YouTube, which I'm going to put it up, it's probably on Saturday or Sunday, you're going to watch this clip and you're going to go, wow. Wow. Like, wow. Like I said, I started Detroit Lions News in 2013. There were years that, you thought you'd have a good team. And there were years that you knew that the team was total shit. So don't put the effort in. And then I remember during the Matt Patricia years, I got so pissed off, so turned off from watching Detroit Lions football that I didn't even do my page for a whole year. For a whole year, I didn't do my page. I was so pissed at the organization. I was so pissed at the team. I was so pissed at the people that they hired that were absolute buffoons. Now with Dan Campbell and Brett Holmes, you got an absolute opposite of the equation. When people look at Dan Campbell, they see part of them in them. You see part of you in Dan Campbell. A guy who just doesn't give a flying fuck what anybody thinks. And, you know, people are going to love it. People are going to love it. And Brett Holmes, a smart man, a guy who can build a roster, who can find talent. This is something the Detroit Lions have always needed. A general manager who could put together the right team. And I know a lot of people aren't aware. Like, there might be new Lions fans that are listening to the podcast right now, and they're going, what is he talking about? Go back and watch the Matt Patricia years. That's how bad it was. And a lot of people talk about the Matt Millen years, but honestly, I think the Patricia years were worse because you had a legitimate quarterback and you wasted those years. And then you get a trade, you get a cast off in Jared Goff, and you make something of it. Look, Detroit Lions are not a perfect team. I'm not even saying they're a Super Bowl team. I'm saying that they have built a culture to where you can think and you can believe that this team is going to be a team to be reckoned with in 2023 and beyond. And all you have to do is look at the front office. All you have to do is look at the coach and what he's all about, accountability, being on task. You look at that and you tell me the difference between the Detroit Lions of old and the Detroit Lions that are new. This is the brand new Lions. So people really need to take a look and look at it. I'm your host, Joe Chap. I hope you enjoyed the podcast of season 2 of the Detroit Lions podcast. We were hoping to do podcasts during the summer, but just things didn't happen like they should have. There was a lot of things I was dealing with. So I couldn't bring you podcasts throughout the summer, and I would have loved to, but there was just things that happened that I had to get off. I had to take care of. So thank you for listening. We are going to have podcasts before every game. They're probably the Thursday or Friday before the games, maybe the Wednesdays. We're going to have post-game podcasts that will be posted live to YouTube and our Spotify and Apple. And it's just going to be a fun year. We're going to have daily content on the Between the Whistles Detroit YouTube page. So if you're not subscribed, you really need to subscribe to the Between the Whistles Detroit YouTube page. And I will put that link in the podcast descriptions so you can click on it and subscribe from there. I'm Joe Chap, and I will see you on the next episode of the Detroit Lions News Podcast next week. So I will see you then.